Hi, everybody. So I'm going to go through some of the questions on the last assessment that there seem to be some issues with. Remember, this video is not mandatory. It's just if you want to watch it and go through if you're having trouble finding your mistakes. All right. So for this first problem, the first thing I'm going to do is remember when we're adding, subtracting, we can actually add or subtract in any order that we want. So I'm going to rearrange these and say 45 minus 13 minus 62. And I'm going to get rid of my two negatives first. So that this way I can just have a positive and a negative left over. And remember, when we have the exact same sign, we can treat them as positive numbers and we can add them. So 62 plus 13 is then going to give me 75. And since they were both negative, that means that our answer is going to be negative as well. So 45 minus 75, right? Because if we're starting at a negative position of negative 13 and we're removing 62 more from it, then that means on our number line, we must be going in left towards the left, which means we're moving even further from the positive numbers and becoming even more negative. So now we're left with 45 minus 75. From here, then we will do look at them as both as positive numbers again, and then we're going to off to the side, take the larger number, subtract the smaller one from it. So 75 minus 45, this is going to give me 30. And then the way I know what my final answer is I look and see, okay, well, what was my sign of my larger number? So since my larger number was negative, that means our answer must be negative as well. Because if you look at this, if I only had 45, let's imagine that these money or whatever. We only have $45 and we spend 75. That means we're spending more than what we have, which means we need to go into the negative. We have more negative to begin with, so that means we're going to have more negative at the end. And that will be our answer, negative 30. All right, when we go to do this next one, I'm going to just rearrange these and say 63 minus 34. Remember, we can rearrange these to write them in an order that seems more natural to us. And since we have a positive and a negative, maybe you get in the habit of always writing your positive number first and then subtract the other number. So this way you can see, oh, okay, this isn't a problem I can definitely do. And I don't need to worry about changing any signs because since 63 is larger, I know I can go ahead and subtract how I normally would. So I borrow the 1. 13 minus 4 gives me 9. 5 minus 3 gives me 2. So I know it's then going to be the absolute value of 29 minus the absolute value of 14. Right now, the absolute value of 29 we know is 29, so we can get rid of the absolute value bar. It's still minus here. Even though the absolute value of 14 is a positive 14, we're subtracting that 14 from the 29, so it needs to remain 29 minus 14. This negative is not inside of the absolute value, and negative absolute value of 14 does not equal the absolute value of negative 14 because this will give us a positive, and since this negative is on the outside, it gives us a negative. So it's 29 minus 14, which is then going to be 15. All right, so problem number 11. So some people are just having some trouble when you're multiplying with this. So I'm going to go ahead and just go through the steps of multiplication. So if we're doing negative 67 times negative 85, well, right away I know my answer is going to be positive. So I'm going to write that off to the side just so I can remember because a negative times a negative is going to be positive. All right, then we line up our numbers. So 67 times 85. And then from here, we're just going to take that first number and multiply. 5 times 7 is 35, so I'm going to carry the 3. 5 times 6 is 30, and then we add that 3, so it gives me 33. What some of you were doing is some of you are multiplying 5 times 3 and adding the 6. So remember, the number that we're carrying is what we're adding to it. Once we move to our next digit, we need to put our 0 as our place value because we're now multiplying by tens. This is 80 that we're multiplying by. Even though we're seeing 8 times 7, it's really 80 times 7. And since we're multiplying by tens, any times that we multiply a 10 by any number, even by 1, well, by any whole number, it's going to give us a 10 in return. So that's why we have to put that 0 as our place value to say, well, we won't have any 1s now that we're multiplying with 10s. And 8 times 7, so now what you could do is you can cross out that 3 so that way you don't mistakenly use it the next time. 8 times 7 is going to give me 56. So I'm going to put the 6 and carry the 5. 8 times 6 is 48 plus 5 is 53. So I'll go ahead and write 53. And now we just go and add down. 5 plus 0 is going to give me 5. 3 plus 6 is 9. 3 plus 3 is 6. And then we have 5, 6, 9, 5. Since I said it was positive to begin with, I know I didn't need to change anything there. So I'm going to go ahead and just circle that as my final answer. All right, so now we're going to go to question number 12. And this was one that a lot of people seem to struggle with. And when you see that we have multiplication and we have division and both and adding, subtracting, that means we need to then go to our PEMDAS. And remember, the one thing I need you to be aware of is multiplication doesn't happen first. even though it's written first here, once we get to the multiplication division, we need to go left to right. All right, so make sure that you're being aware of that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to scan around and say, okay, I see I have multiplication and I have division, and they're within the same number. So I need to make sure that, because both of these, this negative 30 looks like it's being multiplied and divided. So I need to make sure I'm going in the proper order. So we need to go left to right. So that means this multiplication needs to be done first. So I'm going to have 25 minus 134. Well, 4 times a positive times a negative is negative. 4 times 30 is 120. So I know I have 120 divided by negative 10 plus 38. Right? Then from here, now I have my division. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this out again. 25 minus 134. A negative divided by negative is positive, so it's not going to be plus. 120 divided by 10 is 12, so plus 38. And at this point, we can go ahead and add in any order that we want. So I'm going to, or subtract. So I'm going to add all my positive numbers off to the side just to get that done and over with, and then just have a positive and a negative left over. So I have 38, 12, and 25. 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 5 is 15. 3 plus 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So that's going to be 75. So now I have 75 minus 134. Well, since I have more negatives than positives, I'm going to just look at these as both positive numbers. And this way I can go ahead and use the method that you may be most comfortable with by borrowing. So here I can take the tens from the 3. So now I have 14 minus 5 is 9. 2 minus 7 I can't do, so I'm going to borrow 100 from there. So then 12 minus 7 is going to give me 5. So since our larger number was negative and I had more negatives to begin with, that means my answer is negative 59. All right, so now we're moving on to question number 17. Once again, I see division, multiplication, all this, so I'm going to have to go ahead and do my PEMDAS. All right, now, even though it doesn't look like a parentheses, remember, parentheses means grouping. So this here inside of our absolute value actually needs to be done first because that is being grouped together. So if I'm going to do 42 minus 65, I see that I'm going to look at them as both positive numbers, and I will do it as 65 minus 42, which is then going to give me 23. And since the 65 was negative to begin with, I know it's going to give me a negative 23 as my simplified true answer. Right? Some of you are just forgetting to work and use that negative each time. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this out step by step. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and I have to now do this absolute value first. So I'm going to actually just rewrite this. I'll erase this as rather than rewriting it all out for interest of time. The absolute value of negative 23 is a positive 23, so it becomes times 23. All right, now I'm going to go through and do all my math together with just multiplying and dividing. So I did my parentheses. Now I'm left with multiplying and dividing, and I need to go left to right. So I'm going to first do this division. So 40 divided by 5, they're both positive, so it gives me 8. I still have this times negative 2, so that's going to give me minus 16. So I know that this is going to give me a negative 608 minus 16, and I've done these parts so far up to here. Actually, I won't cross it out like that. All right. Then from here, I still have this plus 132. That nothing's happening to that yet. And then when I get to this one, I have negative 6 times negative 20. Negative times negative gives me a positive. 6 times 20 gives me 120, so it's plus 120. So I know that's going to be here, plus 120. And then I have this multiplication as well. Even though absolute value makes this number positive, it's being multiplied by negative 3. So we know that this is going to give me a minus, and 3 times 23 is going to be 69. So then we have minus 69 plus 312. Right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add all my positive numbers together first. So I'm going to add all these together off to the side. So we'll do 312 plus 120 plus 132. This will give me 4, 6, and 5. So I know I'm going to have 564. And then I'm going to add all of my negatives together. So here, here, and here, just to see what my numbers look like so I can combine them all into one. So when I add them together, I'll get 608, 16, and 69. So 8 plus 6 is 14, plus 9 is 23. 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 6 is 9. And then we have our 6 here, so it's going to be minus 693. And once again, since this number is larger, or negative is larger, we're going to go ahead and look at them as both as positive. And then we'll do 693 minus 564 off to the side. So this will give me 9, this will give me 2, and this will give me 1. And then since our larger number was actually negative, or we had more negative to begin with, our final answer will need to be negative 129. All right, and that will be our final answer for that one. And then I'm going to go through some of the true or false real quick, and then the mastery question. All right, so the product. Well, first you need to know what product means. It means multiply. And the product of a negative and positive integer. Well, we know whenever it's a negative and positive, that's going to give me a negative as my answer. This says always positive, so this one will be false. Right? It is not always positive, it is always negative. For here, it says the sum of two negative integers will always be negative. So now we just need to think, okay, whenever I add two negative numbers together, let's say negative 5 plus negative 6, just for sake of being easy, this will give us negative 11. And remember, if we're starting on our number line at negative 5, or any number that's negative, and we're moving even further to the left, that means we're going even more in a negative direction, which means our number will always be negative. So this one is true. And then here it says that integers number system includes fractions. Integers are all whole numbers that are positive and negative, no fractions. Once we get to the rational number system, that includes fractions. So integers does not include fractions. So on your test, if you're getting any fractions, that means that you're doing something wrong, and that should have triggered something because you knew that we were dealing with integers at this time and not rational numbers. So that will then be false. All right, so now I'm going to go through this mastery question with you all real quick. So we have our PEMDAS. Right? And then the first thing we're going to have to get rid of is our parentheses. And our parentheses, we actually have two of them here. Even though you don't see a parentheses here, when it's all grouped together, because remember, it's all about grouping. That's what the parentheses actually tell us. All that numerator is grouped together. It means we have to do that together. And this is all grouped together, so we need to do that as well. So I'm going to do this off to the side here. And within our numerator, I have to use my PEMDAS as well. So it'll be negative 32. Well, 4 times 6 is going to be 24, so plus 24, plus 16 minus 42. So then I'm just going to go through this step by step quickly. You guys can add this on your own. This will give me negative 8 plus 16, which is then going to give me 8, minus 42, which is then going to be negative 34 over top of 2. All right, here we will then have to do 4 times 31 first, which is 124. And then we have 167 minus 312 plus 124. So then 312 minus 124 is going to give me a negative 188. So now we have 167 minus 188. So then when we minus the 167 from there, it's going to give me a negative 21. However, it's the absolute value, so it becomes positive 21. So now I'm left with minus 360 divided by negative 12 times 5 plus 125 minus 24 times 15 minus 5 times a positive 21 after we took the absolute value. Right, so now we're going to go ahead and do all this multiplication that we can. So negative 34 divided by 2 is negative 17. Minus, well, 360 divided by 12 is going to give me 30. And since they're both negative, it's actually going to be plus 30 times 5 plus 125. And then 24 times 15 is going to give me 360. And negative times a positive is negative, so minus 360. And 5 times 21 is going to give me 105. And negative times positive is negative. All right, and then I still have one more multiplication to do here, so it's going to give me a positive. So it'll be negative 17 plus 150 plus 125 minus 360 minus 105. Now I'm going to go ahead and add up all of my positive numbers together. So 150 plus 170 or 125 is going to give me 275. So I know I'm going to have 275. Right, because I just added these together. And then I'm going to go ahead and add up all of my negatives. So I'll have 17 plus 360 plus 105, which is going to give me 482. But since they're all negative, it's minus 482. And then 482 minus 275 is going to give me 207. However, since the larger number was negative, our answer needed to be negative 207. Let me circle that a little bit better. All right, and that is it for this video. If you need any help, let me know.